am going to just, before I start the meeting, just make a comment about just when if we do anything that we're going to vote on, the only ones that are allowed to vote, of course, those that are paid members, either from the year 2021 or 22 if you've already paid your membership dues. Second to that, if we do vote on something, we work on it that I may motion and say, may have a motion to, let's say, accept the budget as said. I just need someone to make a motion besides me, say I make a motion to accept it. We only need that motion. We only need it to be second if someone wants to talk about it further. If no one wants to talk about it further, we just need to make that motion and then it will be voted on by an yay or nay. Just to clarify that, okay? Are you taping that also, Mark? Anyways, I'd like to welcome everybody here to the 2022 Heartland Historical Society Spring Meeting. And it is nice to see everybody in a crowd. It's been a while. We're all rusty from being together. So this is an event in itself, I guess, that we're out of COVID a little bit. I do want to then make that comment that the town hall did tell us that because of the uptick of COVID in the state of Connecticut, they recommend wearing a mask, but it is not mandated. So everybody feel free to do what you're comfortable with. I do have other masks up here if you choose to. The first thing I'd like to do is, I don't think everybody signed in. I want to talk about, I'm going to pass this book out, and if you would please sign it if you haven't signed it yet. And secondary to that is that the Historical Society has been given a grant from the Connecticut Humanities. I'll speak about it in a little while. But on your seats, there's this very short survey. The survey does not ask for your name or anything. It's just a demographic survey so that Connecticut Humanities can then do research on knowing what their audience is. So if you wouldn't mind, I have some pencils here. Everybody, unless some people have pens or whatever to do that. Does anybody need a pencil to fill that out? Here, Jerry, pass that out and you're good there. Whatever works. It's just 3 very quick. And you either can just put it at the end and we're just going to go, it's just going to go into this pile and we're collecting those throughout. We're going to collect them throughout the year. So anybody who goes to our Gaylord House or any of our events, we will be asking for this survey. This is a requirement because we hope to get more grant money from them in years to come. Randy will take them if you would. Go for it. I will say this, you are not mandated to give the survey. It's your choice. Who you are. Okay. But no names were needed.
It says, is each with you
today? Ted, do you have a question?
0.
Yeah. Answer it to your best, and we'll move along. All right. So I would like to now conduct our annual business meeting. So I would like you to get comfortable. It could take an hour. I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as we can, and then we will introduce our 2 craftswomen this evening. I would like to call the meeting at 7:08. And the first thing we do is we will have our secretary, Megan Lindgren. She is going to read some of our fall membership minutes as per our bylaws. Yep, why don't you come up? That's a good idea.
The fall membership meeting was held October 3rd, 2021 at the West Hartland Community Hall. Bud Rowe, the treasurer, gave a budget summary. President Joanne gave an update on the Lions and Land Trust and Historical Society giving gift bags to new residents. Camp Owlsmere at the Canoe is being moved to Louise Hayes' house until the carpentry work is completed. Under open and ongoing, the 10-year plan has been updated. There was a motion made to replace the flagpole in front of the Gaylord House, and it was voted for a value up to $700. Ted Jansen made the motion. It was seconded by Marcia Ransom, and all voted in favor. Pandemic stories were collected in 2021. The Collinsville Axe Company grinding stone, which will be displayed, an information plaque will be made. Boy Scout stories will be collected by Les Sinlin and Brett Watson. And the library project, there will be a historical bookshelf, and it was added to include the HHS newsletters to that. The meeting was adjourned.
That's good. Thank you, Megan. Now, we did not read it in full because it just gets, we have a lot of detail, etc. But I would like someone to make a motion to accept the minutes from the fall membership meeting as said tonight.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Do we need a second on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. Okay. Bud, the treasurer, would have been asked to be called on right now, but Mr. Bud is not feeling well, so he is not here, obviously. So what I am going to do is, this will not be voted on because he still needs to do a little bit of work for the breakdown. I'm just going to make the statement that at the beginning, January 2021, we had a balance of $32,360. During the year 2021, we had income of a total of $8,291. Again, I would give you a little bit more breakdown on that. The one thing I will is we do exist on our memorial donations, our regular donations, and membership. So memorial donations alone, we received $1,500 in the year 2021. Regular donations, $1,200 plus, and then our membership, about $2,280. So that is how we do live, and we're very, very, very appreciative of it. The expenses we had in 2021 was $6,964. So you can see we bring in $8,000, but we're spending $6,000. So we're on a pretty tight budget. Our end balance to date is $33,687. Anybody have any? I'm just looking here to see. So I don't think he actually has in here right now that we are receiving over $4,000 on the grant money. So that's going to give us a nice cushion. So again, anybody have any question on that? But we are not going to vote on it because it's not complete. We will send out an email to have it voted on.
Do we have to spend it on anything specifically?
I'm going to read from Terry was unable to be here due to a funeral, but she did give me some information to read out loud about the grant. And I'll talk to you about that later. Okay, so that is our treasurer report at this point in time. I myself, Joanne, as president, I wanted to just quickly tell you the accomplishments in 2021. Megan did mention a couple of them. But one of them was a fun project working with the town library. So we have created some library posters for that. One is about how the Heartland Library began, who was responsible, the founder, etc. So look for that poster in there for some history on our town library. We also, like Megan mentioned, we have our own section along with the Lions Club and the other nonprofit, the Land Trust. So we will have our pamphlets there, or any publications for you to be able to take out and see. Also there, I want to make mention that Ted Jansen helped us get a frame made for one of the maps of the town of Hartland. So that's on the wall over there also. So Ted's here, thank you very much. It's actually on the wall, Ted. Those of you maybe weren't at the fall membership, I just wanted to say our accomplishment 2021 was finally getting published, the index to our original proprietors of Hartland in the 1750s. It was a Tiffany Gaines project that was done up to 1911. We have copies in the library now if you want to hear about some of our early settlers. It talks about the map of where they lived and also a little bit about them. And it's at the town hall has it now, and the library has it, and we're looking to put it into the school also. She also mentioned, Megan mentioned the grinding stone. The grinding stone is on display, and I wanted to tell you because it has a little cool history. This grinding stone was from the Collins Company, and they were in the business of making axes. This grinding stone, if you ever go over there, was originally 12 feet in diameter. It's now only a 2-footer, so it has seen a lot of life. This is a grinding wheel that's powered by water, and they take a blank, I guess, on the metals to make an axe. So this CCC camp, if you're familiar with that, a CCC camp was the one who ended up getting these worn out grindstones. So it was at CCC camp for a while, and they used it to sharpen their forestry tools for many years. We're not sure how they powered it because it mentioned it was by water, but we understand that Gladwin Parmalee did use an electric generator at one time at the CCC camp, but we don't have any pictures or anything to show that. And UB Parmalee had this one from the CCC camp and gave it to us last year as a donation, so we're very thankful of that, so come and check it out. Also in 2021, we had donations. Louise Hayes was grateful. We graciously gave us a hose and watering can because we've done a lot of work on our gardens. And the garden's been thinned, weeded, redesigned, and some new plants have happened over there. And we have all the new white small stones placed along the side of the house. We did a nice, very big cleanup last year. We also reprinted, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the coloring books that we sell, but they're from the 1990s, so some of them went out of print. We did do some reprinting on them. And as Megan mentioned, our 10-year plan is in place, and we did have a very well-received Boy Scout Troop 121 tribute at our Blueberry Picnic, and we have many artifacts that are still on display, but we're in the midst of archiving that now. And we do have new t-shirts that you might have seen at the last year at the carnival. So then the other on the pandemic stories, we have received 7th and 8th grader stories. We have 9 of them with parent permission. So we'd like to be able to put a booklet or at least have a file that's a little thicker than this. We have one other story that Ted Jansen actually supplied us about the PPE mask story in town. And we have a few others that will be coming our way. She knew, PM. They have a wonderful story to tell also. But I send that out to you. Anybody else who might have some pandemic story you'd like to write something up, please submit it to us. Our open items, we still have the open item 50-year lease is coming up for us to have the Heartland Historical Society Museum, 2030. So we're at only 10 years now of an open door on that. Maggie, the selectman, is aware of it, and she's to keep us posted to get in touch with MDC. She's been working along with them over the past year. So we hopefully it will be the right answer, and we will be able to just perpetuate and continue to have this place for our museum. The Lions Club, the Heartland Historical Society, and did I say that right? Lions Club, Land Trust, and the Heartland Historical Society created a welcome committee last year. We started it just before COVID hit, so it kind of just went to the side, but we were able to bring it back in the fall, and we ended up in January reaching out to 66 new residents. Believe it or not, we had 66 new residents from 2019 to 2021. And we brought welcome packages to their doorstops. We did not knock on doors, or, you know, back in the day, you would have probably brought brownies with you, said hello, and gave them their packet. But we just sent a letter out telling them we were coming to their house, you know, so we wouldn't have any dogs at us or they'd be concerned. And we're going forward with that to watch anytime we have a new resident now that we will give them a welcome package. School Street Walking Trail proposal, for those that I don't think you may know about it, but if you're familiar with School Street in Riverton Center, so the Hitchcock Chair building, that's School Street, and you go to the end of that, it's a dead end, but actually where you go into is state property. On that state property used to belong to Heartland residents back in the 1790s, and it was one of the first sawmills. And it became the Calico Prison, and actually there are 2 beautiful cellar holes there, etc., and part of the works. We are looking to create a walking trail that may be just a half mile, 3/4 mile long. So we're working with Deep, Phelps, and Heartland Historical Society and the Barkhamsted Historical Society, along with the 2 selectmen from those 2 towns. So maybe a long time coming, but we're looking forward to it. Vice President, okay. Nothing to report through Terry Atwood. We'll get back to her. Second, I'm also as curator. So As curator, I have some open items. Again, one of the open items is the Boy Scout trailer. So Jack Segelka, suppose he's going to go look through the Boy Scout trailer and see if there are any artifacts in it that we want to bring over to the Heartland Historical Society. I'm making that assumption everybody knows that Heartland Troop 121 was disbanded last year. So we're trying to take care of any of the things that we can do for them. And the Boy Scout stuff is still exhibited. And I want to just say I have a new volunteer, which is great, and Jerry's here tonight. Jerry Zimmerman has volunteered to help me with the process of archiving and putting in the database all of those artifacts that we did get from the Boy Scouts. So it's uniforms and books and flags and lots of things. So I'm very, very grateful to having Jerry to come on board to help us out with that. With this year's donation, a notable donation, another notable donation was from Stanley Ransom's family. We now have a handmade dulcimer. I think it's 1786. I shouldn't say that out loud. That is on display at the Gaylord House too, and it may be the subject of our blueberry picnic. Maybe instruments he might come and play. I think he's like 89. Yeah, wonderful gentleman. So, and then the other open item is that there are 2 other posters that are being developed for the walls of the Heartland Town Library. And one of them is about the history of Anna Williams. So here looks at Anna Laura Williams Crane. She was a literary New York agent who actually the signing of Gone with the Wind happened on a house on Highview. If you ever go through the stone house, it's on Highview. That is where the rights were signed. So we have a little history of that. Will be going on the wall, I'll tell you. And then the other one is also the history of the Bates family, which we had presented at another time. The Bates family have been here for 5 generations, and they're still here today. So there is going to be a poster telling you that story too. Another piece of the Heartland Historical Society is about oral history. Right now, this is going to be oral history once, because we're going to now have this documented, seeing a spinning wheel and a drop spindle demonstration. But we do need a chairperson. So wanted chairperson to handle coordinating oral history. Interested, let me know. For membership and grants, Terry Atwood is our chairperson. And I have her notes here. First off, I will tell you just a little bit of membership information. Give me a moment. So for the year 2021, we have 109 memberships from 2021. So that is a very good number. I can remember when we were 75 or under, so we're doing well. It's 46 single and 63 are family. The interesting is with the singles, it's 26 of those singles are out of town residents, and 20 of them are local. Family, I have 15 out of town and 48 locals. So we have a total of 36 out of town members, which means they don't live in Hartland, and 68 locals. So it's wonderful to see those who have been a resident of Hartland, they still want to be involved. It's also those that might be looking for genealogy about their ancestors, and they end up becoming a member. So right now we look very good, and we'll hope to stay that way. With the donations, we received 54 donations in 2021. That's 20 from out of town and 34 from local donations. And I won't say their names out loud. These are the ones that we've received donations in memory of. Kenneth and Virginia Butler, Jerome and Mildred DeForest, Paul Crunden, Clarissa Crunden Miller, Wade Cole, Grace Jones, Paula Seppi, Jim Hayes, Ellen Jansen, Esther Hayes Laubin, Russ and Polly Hayes, Neil Muller, Marion Murray. She's still with us. Don't take that as, I don't know if anybody knows her, she's still with us. Harold and Bertha Groth, those are my in-laws. Alan Burt Liliendahl, Joan Stokes, John Raby, John Ransom, Mary Ransom, Mary Wilson, and Edna Snyder. So we have a lot of people that are still remembering those who have come from Hartland. So that is our membership report from Terry. The second piece is Terry Atwood was the one that was responsible for gathering the information and putting in the grant information that we did receive this year. So I'm going to read what she wrote here. We have received a grant from the Connecticut Humanities Council for the 2022 year in the amount of $5,400. That's big for us, to be put towards our operating expenses. The funding has been provided by the Connecticut State Department of Economic and Community Development, Connecticut Office of the Arts from the Connecticut Legislature. So Connecticut Humanities is an independent, nonprofit affiliate of the National Endowment of the Humanities. CTH connects people to the humanities through grants, partnerships, and collaborative programs. CTH projects, administration, and program development are supported by stated and federal matching funds. That's what this is about. Community foundation and gifts and private sources. Our goals with this grant, in addition for paying for some of our ongoing operating expenses at the Gaylor House, include improving our digital presence through improvements in our website, dearly needed, social media and virtual payment solutions for donation and membership dollars. This $5,400 has to be spent in the year's time. So the website could be one of the big items we're looking into as far as finding someone to help us out with that. Very much needed. And again, it can be some of our ongoing expenses too. So we're very excited to have that. Okay, newsletter. So on the newsletter, I'm the one who puts the newsletter together, but I want to thank you to our 2021 contributing writers, Richard Peterson, Lynn Robitel, Therese Gunderson, Terry Atwood, and Monica Sigelka, and Laura Guptill for photo editing. I couldn't do without the writers. I'm not a great writer, and I ask and receive. It's been happening. But anybody has interest in writing or helping out with the newsletter, again, volunteers are wanted. Telephone, let's see, fundraising. Also handling fundraising at this point in time. So also needed a chairperson for fundraising. So if you would like to help, there is a place for you. One of the things that we're talking about, I'm just going to quickly do this just because you're here. So this is going to be the new design, I think. So I'm going to ask a question. Maroon or navy blue as far as the lettering? Who likes maroon? Give me a hand. Who likes navy? Maroon it is, I think. And this is the design I think we're going to go with. Something a little different. It's more general, not just historical, but it's Hartland. So, and going with the gray. So hopefully we'll see those this year. All right. And that is actually our town color, maroon. It's a school color. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
All right. So one note that might have been mentioned in the newsletter that you may not have read, but I want it to be stated tonight, is that we will no longer be getting our Heartland miniature houses made for us by Karen Delton. We thank her so much for her 25 years of supporting us. She would make them, and we would pay for them and then sell them, obviously, at a profit for us. But once these are gone from our inventory, there will be no more. And if somebody else wanted to take up that particular project, we wouldn't be able to repeat what she's done. So basically a copyright on her work. June 4th, the First Church is putting on a tag sale, so I was considering dragging over lots of stuff, but it's a lot of work. So I was looking to bring over some tag sale items that we have in our Santa shop. We have quite a lot of inventory. This might be another way for us to get some funds. All right, next, Gaylor House. Docents. For those that don't know, we're open 7 times a year in a first Sunday of each month. And a docent really is that volunteer that's willing to be there to basically host anybody coming in, answer questions, or write a question down and we can get back to them and talk to them. But it's collecting their name and address even if they're there, if there's someone that we don't have already. We had a delightful first opening in May, which is nice. How many did you say was there, Lori? We had.
It's on the sign-in sheet.
It's in the sign-in sheet.
Maybe
But we did have a family from Granby come in, and it's unusual. Usually it's someone who's interested in the genealogy or they're from town or whatever, but we did have a family of 4, mom and dad and 2 kids, and they really had an enjoyable time there.
and
So
a large donation.
And they gave it,
out.
yeah, we ended up with a $100 donation or something from them. They bought some books, etc. But delighted that folks are starting to move around. There's wonderful things to see at the house. But the docent is there because we need someone to be watching what's going on, allow someone to come in, set up, etc., do spotlight cleaning, etc. So again, another one, volunteers are wanted. But this year I'm glad to say that Lori Guptill has accepted the position as chairperson so that she'll be organizing and making sure we've got coverage. Monica Sigelka has also agreed to doing every single day, and then we just have to find someone else to come in along with that. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take that back. It is not you as chairperson for docent of your garden, so I apologize. But Lori is always there too, so. Sure.
No, but I can, because we have to be here on Sundays for the veterans at the senior center.
Yeah.
We'll be here and we'll be at the house at 2 o'clock.
Okay. Yep. So at this point in time, actually, we're looking for coverage July 5, August 14th, September 4th, and October 2nd for someone to be with Monica. So again, volunteers wanted. I think Jerry even mentioned he might have an interest in starting that out. So I have a whole booklet as far as what that's all about. And that's it on docents. The gardens. The gardens, like we mentioned earlier, have been spruced up and look terrific. That is, I'm sorry, where Lori Guptill has accepted chairperson to coordinate the gardeners. So we have a crew, I call them my blooming crew. There's like 6 of them, and they all took a little piece of the pie, and it's doing well with it. It's working well that way. And that is Gail DiMaggio, Deb Gilpin, Nikki Hall, Fran Benedict, Lori Guptill, and Randy Strauss are our main blooming crew. And we have Greg Sertilli and Kip come over when I need a little bit more heavy work to do the leaf growing and raking or digging or whatever. So we got a good crew at this point in time. So thank you very, very, very much. Housekeeping, again, volunteers wanted. So on a housekeeping chairperson, we have to clean the house and close it down. So every spring we used to get a gang together. It'd be like 6 or 8 of us, and we'd have 2 days that we would decide on. Because of COVID, that kind of hasn't been happening. But we do need someone that's going to be able to go in there and just before it opens up every month to make sure there's always a spider or there's droppings or bugs that are on the sill or whatever. But again, would really be helpful to get a chairperson to follow that along. Okay. Maintenance projects, I am going to give the floor to Kip Menser as our chairperson.
You're not the chair of this? So the Gaylord House, maintenance. The Gaylord House is in great shape.
Yeah.
You know, we had the roof redone and we had the house painted. It really looks great. It's a wonderful building. It really is. It's in really good shape. The gardens look wonderful. You know, the work was done, you know, last year and now it's continuing on. So basically the house is really, really in great shape. We made it through the winter okay. The winter's always kind of interesting, and the water's back on. One of the things we do, we keep the furnace going. You know, it's obviously no one's living there, but we have an alarm system and we have security and so forth. But we keep the furnace going on a very low, you know, temperature. But we made it through the winter fine. It's always interesting when you turn the water on in the spring. Is the pump going to work and so forth, and everything's working really well. We constantly have what we call the mouse patrol, because we have some little critters that we take care of, but that seems to be under control. We have a combination of traps and the ultrasonic things. And really, I mean, that's really about it. The house is in really great shape. We are blessed with a really, really nice building. I mean, it's a great museum, so if you haven't been over there, just stop over at some point. And I want to say, too, that millstone, when you, and that was donated, I think, by her. QB, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, that millstone, when you walk on the sidewalk, our brick sidewalks where we have the memorial thing, it's on the left-hand side. It's really kind of neat. So there's a little plaque there and so forth.
Where the plaque will be put there, it's not there yet.
Oh, it's not there yet?
Not there yet, don't
Okay.
yell at me.
All right. But really, that's about it. The house is in great shape. It's really never looked so good in my history. But
Yeah,
I think that's it.
that's it, okay. And just to clarify that, it is a grinding stone, not a millstone. It's for grinding axes.
What's the difference?
You were saying millstone, so the millstone probably more was for corn.
Corn and wheat.
Just a different, I don't know if the mill, it's a good question though. Is the stone the same when they do corn? Don't know. Well, it is from the axe. It's a grinding stone. Now, I will make a comment here though, and Megan did pointed out that the replacement of the flag, we're hoping that will happen this year, so that we will have a new flagpole. Our flagpole did break twice, even one time where it actually fell over. We went over there and it was on the ground, so we know that we just have to replace it at this point.
It is shorter than it has been.
It's very much shorter.
When it goes down, we basically cut it off. So it's getting shorter and shorter through the years. So it really does need to be replaced.
And Randy and Ted are heading out that little committee to get that to happen. Okay, programs and presentations. Also, chairperson wanted that they'd like to, and that person, of course, would be looking for ideas of just like what we're doing today. There are other speakers out there now that we have a little funding that may be coming in. Now we might be able to spend some money to get outside speakers as opposed to creating the presentation that's been going on of late. We actually, this fall, are going to have Walt Woodward, state historian, and he's going to be coming in and talking about the Nathan Hale story. And he's very interesting to listen to, very good speaker. So that's part of the need for a program's presentation chairperson. Our events for the year, to state them, is first, May 22nd, I want to make the comment that they are having a Wade Cole dedication. They're going to be putting a bench in the West Hartland Cemetery, and they'll do a dedication to this to Wade Cole at 2 o'clock. Everybody is invited to that if you would like to go. We will be there, Heartland Historical Society. We're going to wear our green t-shirts if you want to come along and be part of that. I will be reading the Wade Cole dedication that is in the front of the telephone book that day also. With a little,
is that tomorrow?
Changes.
Sunday.
Sunday at 2 at West Hartland. 2.
2.
May 30th, the Memorial Day Parade is going to be going on, so we will parade. And so anybody, again, if you're interested in being part of the parade, we dress, some of us dress in period costume, or come as in civilian is fine too, but you could parade into the cemetery and stand at Memorial Day. The addition that I have found out is that they are going to be having a little ceremony in the West Hartland Cemetery afterwards, which I think is very nice. That hasn't happened. So there must be a faction that's going to be driving up there after the East Hartland one and doing it there. So that's 10 o'clock sharp in the school parking lot if you're interested in parading along. July 27th to the 30th is the carnival. We will be there with our booth, and we will need coverage for that also. August 14th is our blueberry picnic. That will, the program is being developed, so that'll be determined. And like I just mentioned, October 2nd is the Walt Woodward Nathan Hale presentation. And we Santa breakfast again December 10th. So we'll decide as we get closer. Now I would love a chairperson for Santa breakfast also. So lots of opportunities to help out if you'd like it. Education and school visits. At a time, we would be able to get some of the 4th, 5th, 6th graders from Hartland come over to the Gaylord House, and we would do a treasure hunt. I was hoping that was going to happen this year because COVID kind of settled down a little bit, but now it's spiked up, so it won't happen. But in the future, we do hope we will get the kids back again. They love it, and we do too. So, publicity and media. Another spot, we're looking, I need a chairperson. Once we get our website up and going, we probably need an administrator that's going to be able to go in there and do those small changes once we get that to happen. I know actually Lisa Holden mentioned that she may be in days going forward. She might be one to look to for that. So, believe it or not, I'm going to close unless someone has any questions.
I second that motion.
So we are going to set our date for our next meeting, which is basically a board meeting for June 16th at the Gaylord House, and the time will be determined. Usually it's either 5 or 7. I'll figure that out and send that out. And anybody here is invited to go to that meeting if you want to delve into knowing more about what we do. So I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Does anybody else want to make a motion to adjourn? You already did.
Well, he seconded.
He seconded. He wasn't here to
Can you make the motion?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Adjourn? Adjourn.
Adjourn. I said that.
Let's adjourn. I second that motion.
Someone needs to make the motion.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Randy.
He seconded it, so I thought.
No
we had
seconds
discussed
needed.
it.
We're being funny. So the meeting is adjourned. This ends the business side of today's Heartland Historical Society Spring Membership Meeting. Let's now begin our program on drop spinning in the spinning wheel. But first, a little history I gathered from various sources, such as National Museum of American History website, and an article, much of this from Letha Milan Allah's article, Textiles, History of the Spinning Wheel 2018, which notes many resources and a little Heartland history added at the end. Please note that this is not to be considered information in completeness, accuracy, or timeliness. I mean, the article was 2018, so just to keep in mind, it's not complete. The spinning wheel is an ancient invention that helped to turn plant and animal fibers into thread or yarn, which were then woven by a loom into cloth. No one knows for certain who invented the first spinning wheel or when. Some evidence points to the invention of the spinning wheel in India between 500 and 1000 AD. Other research indicates it was invented in China in 1000 AD, and then spread from China to Iran, Iran to India, and then India to Europe. For the previous 5,000 to 8,000 years, fiber was twisted or spun by hand on variants of the drop spindle. The drop spindle is a slow way of making the long lengths of fiber required for weaving cloth. And an even longer length of fiber was required to make the sails of Viking longboats. Spinning was therefore so important and time-consuming for cloth production that it was the bottleneck for clothing and for sail making at a time when vertical warp weighted looms were already in use to weave cloth, and to even greater extent when horizontal heddle looms took their place in the 11th and 12th centuries. It has been noted that the invention of the spinning wheel speeded up the rate at which fiber could be spun by a factor of 10 to 100 times, removing the bottleneck to cloth production. It would be argued that the spinning wheel led to a breakthrough in linen production when it reached Europe about 1200 AD. With many more linen cloths being produced and many more linen rags being produced, with some unintended consequences. Consequence 1, spinning wheels in paper production. From Printing Press in 1568, in his paper on technology assessment, Lynn White suggests that the availability of linen rags, which resulted from a step change in linen production, also removed a bottleneck in paper production, which had been recently introduced from China. Prior to the introduction of paper, books were made from parchment, and a large Bible required the skins of 200 to 300 sheep or calves to produce sufficient parchment. To have lived back then, huh? Cheap paper then led to the introduction of printing by Gutenberg. The production of cheap books and broadsheets and provided the opportunity for universal education and a basis for modern democracy. Therefore, Cesare Machete argues that modern democracies are a direct, if unintended, consequence of the invention of the spinning wheel in China. Consequence 2, the spinning wheel in naval warfare. It is equally likely that European colonial expansion and naval warfare are also a consequence of the invention of the spinning wheel. The sails of Viking longboats prior to 1000 AD were entirely spun on drop spindles, and the fiber for each sail would have required months of spinning before it was woven. The introduction of the spinning wheel, in combination with developments in weaving looms, would have allowed a dramatic expansion in the number, size, speed of sailing ships for national and merchant navies. The consequence, or historical opportunity, of this being the colonization of the Americas, Africa, and India by European navies and nations. Therefore, the invention of the spinning wheel provided the historical opportunity for modern democracy and for naval warfare, as well as kickstarting the large-scale production of woven textiles. All that is known for certain is that by the Middle Ages and during the early Renaissance, spinning wheels appeared in Europe via the Middle East. Nevertheless, scientists have never been able to pin down the origin of the spinning wheel. Evidence of hand spindles from which spinning wheels evolved are found in Middle East excavation sites dating back as far as 5000 BCE. In fact, the early spinning wheel, in its handled form, helped to spin all of the threads for the fabrics in which Egyptian mummies were wrapped. It was also the primary tool used to spin ships, ropes, and sails. I quickly have to mention, I read a little further where it said like it had to be like 80,000 women were busy with one thing that just amazing. In ancient history of the spinning wheel, F.M. Feldhaus traces the origins of the spinning wheel back to ancient Egypt, not India or China, where before the development of modern technology, it began as the distaff, which is a stick or spindle upon which wool, flax, or another fiber is spun by hand. The ladies may mention this. It was a natural evolution that spinners invented a way to mechanize the process. The hand spindle, the distaff, was held horizontal in a frame and turned, not by hand twisting, but by a wheel-driven belt. The distaff was held in the left hand, and the hand-driven wheel belt was slowly turned by the right hand. Britannica.com writes that the distaff version of the spinning wheel evolved into a stationary vertical rod with a bobbin, and the wheel was accentuated by a foot treadle, thus freeing both of the operator's hands. Again, what this particular article wrote. Britannica.com also reports that it was in the 18th century when the real demand for mechanical spinning wheels began, after the improvement of an earlier version created a yarn shortage. Thus began the true conversion of the spinning wheel into a powered, mechanized component of the Industrial Revolution. So just that gave a little background for the sense of where this came from. Then the National Museum of American History states, sort of a recap, spinning is the simple act of drawing out a few fibers and twisting them together to form a yarn. The process predates written history and was done by hand and with sticks. Spinning wheels are believed to have originated in India between 500 and 1000 AD. By the 13th century, they were seen in Europe and were a standard piece of equipment for those making fiber into yarn. By the 17th century, they were commonly found in homes in the colonies of North America, where the production of fabric was a cottage industry. Spinning was generally seen as a woman's job. Women spun yarn at home as well as with friends at spinning bees, where food was served and prizes might be given to the person who produced the most or the best yarn. The Industrial Revolution again brought mechanization to the textile industry, and eventually spinning was done on large machines in textile mills. So that ends just by little history again, not necessarily incompleteness, but I wanted to just put it in context. This is a little history, so if you'll humor me just for a few more minutes. I would like to tell you a tidbit of Heartland history. Spinning was part of life for Heartland's early settlers. One family story tells us about William French, who came from Raynham, Massachusetts, where he was a wheelwright apprentice for about 7 years. He arrived in Hartland in 1788 at the age of 20 with his wife Rachel, settled in West Hartland in the Mill Street district, purchasing 7 acres for less than $16, which was 12 pounds 10 shillings in the currency of the day, and building a cabin. Quote, "It is likely that William found many opportunities to employ his skill as a wheelwright. Perhaps the first was a spinning wheel for Rachel, an indispensable household appliance for a wife who must clothe herself and William, and in time 12 children, of whom 10 grew to manhood and womanhood and homes of their own." And sidebar is the Frenches were here for many generations also. End quote. In 1793, the French family moved down the hill to the home of Samuel and Rachel Beach. Quote, "Where it is likely that some arrangement had been made for them to take care of an aging couple." So they moved into a house down the hill. In 1803, they purchased the home from the Beach family in 60 acres. This property is located at today's address, 401 Riverton Road, when you go by. Quote, I'm quoting from the French family information given to us. "There is a family-owned photo of a spinning wheel made by William, and his little shop appears in the oil painting of the Heartland French family homestead, made by his grandson, Judge Lucius Myron." End quote. I was supposed to bring a picture of that painting for you, and that's what I forgot this evening. I knew there was something I missed. Another time I'll have to show it to you, but we have a copy of that painting, and it shows the house, and it shows his probably where he did his wheelwrighting. But I wanted to make the comment because at 104 Riverton Road, you'll go across the street, there's the small barn, we all see it, we go by, it's the barn from the French homestead, it's still standing today. William ran a wheelwright shop from 1791 to 1840, 49 years. William is the only documented wheelwright in Hartland. So he came here, he spent the time, and he was the best guy in town. Quote, "Probably most other products of William's labor have gone unidentified because they must have been largely in the form of cart wheels, wagon wheels, and perhaps mill wheels." End quote. Heartland settlers came in 1754, and it was during this time of 1760, early 1900s, that the town of Hartland had various mills and craftsmen. Turning, fulling, grist, saw, shingle, cider, and dish mills, along with ironworks, distilleries, wheelwrights, one wheelwright, blacksmiths, tanneries, tailors, doll and toy sword making, dye houses, coopers, shoemakers, potash works, and wagon, clothing, hat, and shoe shops. There were hotels, inns, general stores, farming and agricultural growth, making Hartland an encompassing, bustling community. We are so far from what it was back in the day. We had to be self-sufficient and had everything around us. So I end with that note that I would like to introduce our two guests this evening, both Heartlanders. First, we're going to have Andrea Lashinsky. She's going to give us a demonstration on the drop spinning. And Andrea moved to East Hartland in 1995 and believes to have started to learn drop spinning around the same time. So Andrea, you have the floor.
Well, she said I'm Andrea Lashinsky. I live down on Mountain Road, across from the Dome. Everybody knows. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that when I started doing a little bit of looking at drop spinning as such did not exist in colonial America. There are no spindle whorls found. There's no, you can be quiet. There's no evidence that drop spinning as such ever existed in colonial America, and I'll take a minute and explain why if I can. The spinning wheel was already common by that point. It became common in Europe in the 13 and 1400s, and it spins much, much faster. You can get a lot more done. You're going to see, you can get a lot more done with a spinning wheel than you can with a drop spindle. Also, Thread doesn't exist for the sake of being thread. Thread exists for the sake of being turned into fabric. And by colonial America, the fabric industry in England and France was well formed and well organized. Women did the spinning, men did the weaving. Guilds controlled who was allowed to weave, and in most cases, men controlled that. Women were not permitted to weave. So the spinning was done by the women to feed the weaving mills, and the fabric was made there. Even in early colonial America, fabric was purchased from overseas. There wasn't a huge fabric industry in America during colonial times. So any spinning and weaving that was done was pretty simple and straightforward. There wasn't anything fancy being done. All of that was being imported from Europe. But the value of seeing what a drop spindle looks like and drop spinning looks like is you're going to be able to see how it transformed into that sort of. I feel like it's a math class where I'm going to show the very beginning part, and she's going to show the end part, and no one's going to know what happened in the middle. You may be able to explain how my spindle, we're going to look at what part of my spindle goes into making her spinning wheel when we get a little further with this. The reason that she and I were rolling our eyes at the difference between a distaff and a spindle is this is a distaff. This is a distaff. This is a tree from my backyard, which is also a distaff. A distaff holds the fiber, organizes it, holds it in place, keeps the wind out of it, makes sure that the fibers are lined up and as ready for you to spin. This is a spindle. It's got a spindle whorl on the bottom. This is a big clay bead. It adds weight. What the weight of that whorl does is it acts as a flywheel. It keeps the spindle spinning when I spin it, so that I don't have to continually keep turning that stick. Attach on to a little bit of fiber here, if we can get some cooperation. There we go. A little bit at a time. I draft out some fiber. I feed, with one hand, I feed the fiber down. The spinning of the stick imparts twist. And I keep feeding until it gets longer and longer. I find it relaxing. But the reason they call these, well, they call them a drop, you can see why they call it a drop spindle. It continues to drop as I work. And occasionally it drops off. The thread parts if I'm not paying enough attention, and it falls to the ground and I get to start over again. And then you have to wind it onto the spindle.
So that's thread now?
Come on up. This is the fun part. Touch that. When we're done, if there's time, I'm going to let everybody can come up and claw through my spindles and so forth.
And it starts. And what is this?
This is wool. This is the wool that was dyed. There you go, dyed in the wool. Dyed as loose fiber, which I am then spinning, because you can dye the loose fiber and then spin it, or you can spin it and then dye it. Or you can spin it and weave it and then dye the fabric. And you get different effects with the penetration of the dye with each of those methods of going. Not even going to get into dyeing and the difference between dyeing with natural dyes and what chemical dyes, how that changed the industry. But this is drop spinning. This is all there is to it. A stick, a stone. I know a woman who says that she taught people that how to spin with a potato and a pencil. There, that the thread snapped. I'm also imparting, we'll talk about imparting twist. As you can see how that I've put so much twist in that when I take the tension off of it, it curls back on itself. That would be an undesirable amount of twist for you with the spinning wheel. But for what I'm doing, for drop spinning, it's perfect. The other things, if you were paying attention to us instead of listening, like you're supposed to be doing, is you watch me doing some combing, and, oh no, Pam doing some carding, The preparation of the fiber from the raw wool from the sheep. You've been to a sheep festival, you've seen, or you've watched the videos of them shearing sheep. That's not ready to spin. You got to get all of the bits of things that sheep walk through out of it before you can do anything with it. It needs to be scoured, which is washed. Then it needs to be combed or carded. And you get different effects with the fiber depending on whether you're combing or carding. I'm not in the interests of moving this along a little bit more quickly and not being here all night. If we come back to that and you want to know the difference between combing and carding, we can talk about that later. The rule of thumb that I heard a long time ago was that it takes, let me say, it was a rule of threes. You needed three women combing and prepping the wool to supply one spinner, and 3 spinners to supply 1 weaver. And you can easily see how you need to do a lot of work to do this. What I do remember is that you need about 3 pounds of wool to keep a person in clothing per year. 3 pounds of wool is a lot of wool. It's a lot of wool. This is probably a couple of ounces. So, a lot of wool. It's a lot of work. Flax is a whole other story. Flax is a plant, and it has a different feel. You can come up here and touch and play with that as well. But this is, that's it. That's drop spinning with a distaff. That's the whole thing right there. Over and over again, and over again, and over again. And I'm very proud. This is a large, I do this for a hobby. This is a bunch of wool that I have spun. Some of it has been dyed by other people. I'm not doing any dyeing of my own yet. Again, you can come up here and touch that. Look at the difference between what I accomplish with the drop spindle and what she accomplishes with the wheel. And you start to understand how the wheel changed, how fiber was turned into thread, was turned into fabric. And I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we can tag team answer your questions after that.
I'm Lindau, and I live on Mill Street, up the street from Joanne. I decided about 4 years ago, I've been knitting since I was 5. My grandmother taught me how to knit when I was 5. And I decided about 4 or 5 years ago that I really ought to learn how to make my own yarn, because I really wanted to work with natural fibers, but couldn't afford to buy the natural fibers already spun. It's very expensive to do that. I knit 3 Tree of Life blankets for a family over in Bakerville, and I bartered with them. They had alpaca and sheep, and they had their alpaca spun. I knit the blankets for their 3 grandchildren. All of them were different. They all had different Tree of Lives in them. And for that, I bartered a year's worth of shearings, and I got 90 pounds of raw. And by raw, I mean it was freshly sheared. And if you want to come up, you can. This is wool. It stinks. It smells. This has not been washed. It has all the lanolin. I mean, I can smell it now. You can feel it. It stinks. When I wash this, it will be more like this color.
Wow.
Yeah. But you scour it. It's many washings. And I'm primitive washing. I am a novice at doing this. It's only been a few years that I've been doing it, and I'm self-taught. I got myself a book called The Ashford Book of Spinning, because I happen to have an Ashford wheel. It's called the Elizabeth. It's the very plain, simple spinning wheel. And sat down, and the first bunch of wool that I made is yarn balls for the dryer balls. Works really well. They fall apart eventually, and then I just take some rotten wool that didn't spin too well, wind it up into balls, and that's my dryer balls. It works really. It takes about 20 minutes off your drying time, by the way, too, in the dryer. But so
that's all I use.
that's all I use. So it starts off that way, And then we card. You can hand card, which I was doing before, and we make what's called rollags, which are nice fluffy things. The main thing what you're trying to do is get the fibers to run in one direction. And then I would pull this out, pre-drafting. Now this still has what's called VM in it, vegetable matter. There's still some hay in it. I figure by the time I'm done with all the washings that I do, by the time it's knit, that's all dissolved. I don't worry about it because I basically just do, I have some hats that I've done. These are the mittens I wear when I walk my dog in the winter. There's fingerless gloves with some alpaca mittens underneath. But it keeps my hands very warm when I'm walking in the winter. And the other, so instead of carding, you can also use a drum carder, which is taking fiber like this and you just crank. It's a lot of arm work. I've gotten most of this one done. You get knots. And you can see hay, bits of hay. And this comes out to what we call a bat. Take it.
If you've ever been up to Sturbridge, one of their mills, one of their water-powered mills is a carding mill. Where the drums are 4 feet across.
Yes.
They're gigantic.
Wow.
And you just kind of peel this off, like that. And I will end up with, I roll it up, I keep it in totes, and I roll it with toilet paper because then it doesn't stick to itself. This is alpaca. Alpaca does not have lanolin. It spins, it's harder to spin because it doesn't stick to itself. And because I'm still a novice, my thickness of my yarn it's thicker than when I spin wool. Wool I can spin thinner because it sticks and I can draw it out better. And then I will come, I spin barefoot because I don't have much feeling in my feet, so this helps me when I'm spinning. And you just, when you're doing, you do a single ply first, which is what Andrew was doing on the drop spindle. You just, to me it's very relaxing too. I could sit all day.
So where did you put the raw material that you're pulling? Is it just on that bobbin?
Mm-hmm. It's going on the bobbin now. I have, I take this bat.
Yeah.
And I pull it apart, and then I draw a little. This one's breaking on me, which it does on the spinning wheel too.
Oh, okay.
And then you just start spinning it. And you would get a full bobbin is what I'm putting it on. And you can see how this is much faster than a drop spindle. I couldn't master the drop spindle at all. I went right to this, that's it, I'm doing this spinning wheel. This way I can sit and watch TV and spin away for a whole day, and my house looks like I've done nothing but sit at my station. Because nothing gets done. Dinner will be late. Then my husband will say, "Are we eating soon?" It's like, no, let me finish this bat, you know. So I'll get this far. I'll stop this one. So I'll get a full bobbin, and then we put it on. I have another bobbin here that I've done. What's called a lazy cape. Lazy cape. Lazy cape.
So what are those hooks for?
That holds it so that it directs where it goes. So if I'm over on this end, I'm winding it, and then you just move it around so it goes on there. So once I've got 2 full bobbins of what I want, I will take this off, and I have a bigger one. That. And this way you can make bigger, you have to adjust.
I'm going to move. There's names for all this. I don't know what they are. It's in my book. This is my brake band, which determines how fast it's going to spin.
Is that white thread or is it elastic or?
It's just white cotton string, basically. It's just basically string. So let me get this on the right one.
Take your stand out.
It very much is, because when she treadles,
Get this on the right one. No.
it moves this rod, which moves this crank, which moves the big wheel. And if you, any gearing, big wheel spins once, small wheel spins many times. So you can get a lot of speed, you can get a lot of twist in that spinning. Whereas for me to spin, my finger makes this wheel spin. Makes this spin that way.
And what you want to do is get this band tight. And periodically you need to loop, like you do your car engine. This is my brake band, which came out. Should like the other way. So what I will do when I have two bobbins, I'll take this one and this one, and I put them on the laser tape. This goes on the floor, and we do what's called plying. And you take the two together, and you get a much stronger yarn. You'll see some are 3-ply, some are 2-ply, you can see 4-ply, and it all depends on the thickness too. And there's all different weights of yarn: lace, fingering, DK, Aran, worsted, bulky, chunky, all of that. So what you would do is you just take any old piece of yarn that you have. This is where I have to look. I don't do this one as often. I still have to look at my directions.
So Andrea, why were you just doing another drop spin and you're using a different form?
This, when you drop spin, you collect things.
Yes.
I'm going to have a collection. This is called a Turkish spindle. You can see that it's a little X-shaped spindle. And you can also see that I wasn't just wrapping it around the shaft of the spindle. I'm wrapping it in a pattern around that, over 2, under 1, over 2, under 1, over 2, under 1, which makes your cop, which is the spun part of the yarn, into that little turtle shape. Why a Turkish spindle? What is the advantage of a Turkish spindle? Well, the fun part about a Turkish spindle, clever person, is that it comes apart and leaves you with your ball of yarn.
And that's what I have, what's called the niddly noddy. And you take your...
I was about to look for something here to see if I've got something I can niddy-noddy
What
off.
did you call it?
Niddly noddy.
Niddy-noddy.
Niddy noddy. And you just crazy around, and you end up with what's called a hang.
Is that a skein?
Okay, other name?
Okay.
Works. So this is how a niddy-noddy works. Fun thing about a niddy-noddy is they would make these lovely tools to a specific size. Your niddy-noddy makes, what size skein does that make? What's the size of your loop?
Oh, you know, I've never measured it.
It's probably a set.
I think it's about
a yard.
I think it's a yard. I think the one time I did it was a yard.
This one makes a 12-inch.
And the bigger you have, and that's why I have the big bobbin, because I can get more on it to get a bigger one. That way you're not having to, when you're knitting, join your balls of yarn. The more you have, the less you have to join, depending on what you're knitting.
I can do a hat if I get enough in one hank. Here, I can do a hat with it.
This is how a nitty nutty goes and why it's called a nitty nutty.
But then once I get the and this is where it takes, and when you're spinning, this is still too tight.
So you're basically respinning what you've already spun.
So it's 2 ply.
You also ply the opposite direction when you
Yes.
spin,
Yes.
so that they lean against each other and tie together. Not tie the way you think of a knot tying, but they intertwine properly. If you ply in the same direction that you spun, they just lay there.
Yeah.
If you ply in the opposite direction from which you spun, they twist around each other very happily.
And there's a Z and an S. I don't know which way I do it.
Ah, but that's easy.
I just, like I said, I'm self-taught.
And I've been taught by dozens and dozens and dozens of other spinners.
I'm not spinning
Z's,
either. It goes this way.
a Z crosses this way. An S crosses this way. When you look at the twist in your fibers as you spun the thread, it's going, because you're twisting it, it's going to have an angle.
All right,
So
it's
you
not going to work today.
Oh,
I see why.
doesn't want to play.
It's not together all the way.
Is there anything we can hold for you? So I habitually
And I
twist.
use dental tools a lot too.
I habitually spin
Dental hygienist.
clockwise. Well, clockwise looking down on it. Which imparts a Z twist. So I spin Z and then I'll apply it S.
S.
There's nothing that says I can't spin the other direction while she's getting that going. This is a very popular drop spindle to purchase as a learning spindle. The fun thing about it is that you can spin top whorl or bottom whorl. It's got a notch that I can put the thread in to spin top whorl, or you turn it this way and the cup hook lets you spin, or I mean bottom whorl, and the cup lets you spin top whorl. So what's the difference? The thing that I have heard explained,
This isn't going to cooperate tonight.
if I'm standing, I'm so used to doing that half hitch, but I don't think of that slot at all. But if I'm standing, I can reach the top of this and flick it very easily and get that clockwise spin. Someone pointed out that if you're spinning on horseback, the Mongols went everywhere and did everything from horseback. They were an enormous civilization. Wow. If you're spinning while you're riding, or if you're spinning while you're sitting, you'll see this Navajo spinners will do this.
Oh, yeah.
You spin it by doing that. You spin it against your leg, which is counterclockwise.
And then you ply the opposite.
And then you ply the opposite. Whichever way you spun, you ply the opposite. But that's top whorl spinning. A lot of people, I know people who say, oh, I can only spin top whorl, I can't spin bottom whorl. And I know an equal number of people that say, oh, I never did get the hang of top whorl spinning. I always have to spin bottom whorl. It's a matter of comfort, what culture you grew up in, who taught you. Wool is my favorite fiber.
Yeah. Much easier.
Wool is magical. I'm a Penn State grad. I was an agronomy major. And I had a great agronomy teacher who talked about wool, and he said wool is a miracle fiber. If it didn't exist, someone would be trying to invent it. It holds 20 times its weight in water before it begins to feel wet to the touch. It's warm even when it's wet. It has microscopic scales on the surface of every hair that make it want to stick together. That's why it is such a dear, dear thing to spin. It's very easy to get those little hairs to stick together and spin and stay stuck. Alpaca doesn't have those scales the same way. It's harder to spin. It's slippery.
Very slippery.
Very
Very
slippery.
hard to learn how to spin.
Silk is even more slippery,
Yes.
but silk is a continuous fiber. You've ever watched somebody unreel silk? Every one of those cocoons gives a single strand of silk the whole length of it. Reeled silk is a really cool thing. But spinning silk is also very slippery. Cotton. Cotton has staples like this. Wool. This is from, I think this was a Romney cross. It's got a 4 or 5 inch, they call staple. That's the length of the hair. That long hair is another thing that as you spin, they overlap. So you've got, it's easy to spin wool. It almost wants to be spun. It's spun. It certainly wants to be felted. If you mix it with a little bit of moisture and a little bit of warmth and a little bit of alkali like soap, you have felt like that. Felting is matching loose fibers together with heat and water and a little bit of alkali. Fulling is what happens when you've woven the cloth, and you do the same process. And it takes the woven cloth and it links it together with all those cross-linking. It's also why you can start out with a nice large sweater and accidentally throw it in the dryer and end up one that fits you more.
Have you ever done the cotton balls? Have you ever take raw cotton and made threads out of them? Or?
Those are short.
Funny you should ask. Somebody gave me some cotton, just like medical cotton, to try to spin. I find it very frustrating. But this is Pima cotton that I received as part of a class on spinning. And you can see, if you tug on it, the staples are still, so each little individual fiber is less than an inch. And the way that cotton is spun.
Yeah, really.
The way that cotton is spun is usually supported. They talk about the spindle. This is hard to see. I know this is terribly hard for you to see. Being worked in India. India spins cotton, and they have chakras. A chakra is a box where a spindle like this sits sideways, and there's a crank. And it spins very, very fast and puts a lot of twist into the fiber quickly. That's fast. I think a chakra probably goes at least that fast, if not faster. Because if you can't get that thing spinning fast enough, you can't get that fiber to stick to itself. It just won't. And so, and it's also spun a little differently. It's spun in a long draw. I'm probably not going to be able to pull this off. I'm not good at this.
The spinning wheel, the hard part for learning is treadling at the right speed, pace, so that it goes. And then, and it doesn't get knotted and twisted on itself.
This happens with a long draw, and instead of, as it spins, it pops. That, I don't know if you can see that. As I spin it, it kind of goes and then it flakes off the end of that. Yes. And I impart twist, and then I draw out a little bit, and then I impart twist, and then I draw out a little bit, and let the twist run up into the fiber.
What do you do about the knots? I like to sew with a needle, and I always end up with a knot.
A knot, and when I'm spinning, if you could see this, this is the ugliest piece of string. I'm sorry, I'm not great at this. I can show enough to show that this is it in concept. I was playing with it a little bit more slowly last night, and I was getting a little better at it, but I'm certainly not practiced. This is not a smooth thread.
So what do you do with that?
What do I do? What do I do with this? I look at it. I'm not very good at spinning cotton. I kind of look at it and go, gee.
No, but I mean, the texture, I get what Pam is doing, because it's ending up thicker and something I can knit with. I couldn't knit with something that thin. I'd be knitting for the rest of my life to make a booty.
Maybe you could crochet or make a
I can bring this right back. I can bring this right back to Hartland. That set of knitted stockings, the silk knitted stockings on display over there, is absolutely astonishing, and the thread is thinner than this.
I'm sorry, I should have thought that would have been a great thing to come bring over.
They knit it with extremely thin threads, especially if they were doing fine things like stockings. And that absolutely did happen in colonial America.
But like Pam's got two that she's joining as one. Can you do the same thing?
Yes. I can either set up a ball of yarn. Oh, the next step from, pardon me, the next step from the knitting knotty, because the wool has some twist to it. I'll pop this off, I'll tie it so that it doesn't twist back on itself.
Oh, really?
And I'll pop it off of here and I'll hang it. I'll dampen it and I'll hang it with the weight overnight until it dries. And that'll set it.
There's holes in different.
And then I will use,
different areas.
Yes.
come on kids, where are you? This is an itty bitty nostipin. It's called a nostipin. And what it is for is making a ball of yarn. It is a ball winding, a manual ball winding device. They make ball winders. They make what they call a swift, which is a really cool thing too. I don't have a swift to show you. They have mechanized how to wind that into a ball. This is my little hand one. I carry a basket of spinning with me. I can carry this with me any place and sit down and spin.
That's the beauty of the drops.
As you can see, this might be a little bit more of a project to take someplace. But once she settles down, she's spinning at 10 times the rate that I can produce.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is set up in the corner of my room.
I'm trying to think. I don't have.
Some of you have seen it.
What I do with it at the moment, because I'm still working on a fairly small scale, and I apologize, I don't think I've got any of the stuff that I actually wove. I do some sewing with it. I actually have sewn garments together with it.
You can do needlepoint, right?
You can do needlepoint, you can do embroidery, tapestries.
Yep.
And I just don't have a piece with me.
But it just
These
seems
are all
that
done.
if
This
you're
is
talking about
tablet weaving.
Wow. But if you're talking about knitting, probably the wheel is better for knitting, whereas you're probably better for.
Depends on the
making
material
fabric
too,
or-
Laura.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I spin thicker.
This is beautiful.
I know.
You did this?
Yeah. That's the stuff that I've spun. So some of it, I can spin thicker. I'm spinning a little fine because I'm working on, I'm working with colored wools because I am doing some embroidery with it. But I can spin a little bit thicker. That's linen threads. That's purchased linen thread. I certainly didn't spin that.
It's okay. I just don't want you to have any kind of weird reaction saying, call me up and cuss me out. That's right. Oh, do that.
Yeah, she won't call you. Yeah.
Just come on.
I'm calling you.
We live in the same place.
That's right. You live with your husband?
I do. We thought we'd try it. We haven't killed each other yet, so it's worked out pretty good.
So, I am now at the, I don't, you're doing your knitting, so now she's going to take that off there and the beautiful stain of Clyde wool.
Start practicing.
I am perfectly happy if you want to come up and look at any of these things and ask questions, please do. I'm at that stage. I could go on and on and on and on and probably on some more. And the easiest way to do that is to let you come up and look and ask questions, and I'll answer what questions I can.
Something like this, do you make placemats, bookmarks, what do you do?
Cat weaving is a narrowware, belts, ties, anything that's really cool you got that working. Before, it was used.
What are you doing now? You're just cutting the.
I'm cutting this so that I can tie the hank, because after this, you have to wash it and set the spin. You wash it in scouring,
about the warp
and you
warp-weighted
what we
loom,
call flack it.
which, well, that's a beast that I actually very fond of. A warp-weighted loom, if you've ever worked, a warp-weighted loom, they would
You got whacked, yes, that's what happened to Brewer, you got whacked.
And the weft goes.
Yeah, oh, they got whacked, yes.
Supplemental weft.
So if I could, normally I happily, like I just use yarn, but then I go.
Other weft you can take.
We'll see, they're kind of.
If I just take this off, it will just be
Twisty.
and come back with it, and then go back again. And then you take that whole
Where this is to
you
go.
would turn it this way.
Yeah.
And you would have a
Yeah, we gotta
long
start at the
fringe.
boat.
Yeah.
You would bind this to the top beam of the warp-weighted loop, because the warp-weighted loop.
But I start off, I had
You put
5
your fibers through, and you
trash
trash
cans,
upwards,
metal
and your
trash
fabric
cans
forms at the
full.
top, and you gradually roll it onto the
And
bottom.
I left
But
it
you would
in
start with
my,
this, and it would give you all of those individual threads in
and-
space to start the wheel. And then when you were done
I
weaving,
don't
you
know
took it
what
off,
Debbie has.
your fabric woven band would be woven into, it would be part of that fabric.
A lot of work.
A lot.
It was a lot of work. It was
A lot of time and a lot of patience.
Yeah,
Well, they didn't have Facebook to distract them.
thank you.
And I say that to be silly, but they really didn't. There was
would just be
not the
hanging
things that we have that we do today.
Normally I do
That
it
was
in
what you
contrast
did, is that
color.
you woke up and you fed the animals, and then you started the fire, or maybe you started the fire and the kids went and fed the animals. and
But
you
after
started
dinner, you
the
can sit around and watch
This
TV,
is,
you sit around and talk,
actually,
while you're
this is
talking,
all
and do
out
this.
You're working.
So, you can go all the way back to the very beginning when you're combing. How much I comb, or you comb, actually, and how much you work that fabric, the raw wool in the beginning, does that set the pace for actually
I
how
only
thick
did, I
and
don't
how
know how-
bumpy or
I
how
don't have
smooth
that.
or whatever you're gonna work with?
What sets that is actually,
So it comes off like, and it will spin on itself. Which
Shall we
is,
close the meeting and then let you continue your conversation?
yeah, please, I don't know where you
Yeah,
are
sorry.
in your.
No, I'm just gonna, we're just gonna end to just so Mark can wind up what he's doing for videotaping, but I want you to feel free to stay as long as you want, enjoy
then you
some coffee and
take it
goodies,
apart.
all right? So,
I slid it in
one
the
comment to
bowl.
make is Heartland Historical Society, we have 2 spinning wheels. We have a flat spinning wheel and a little spinning wheel at the house, if you ever want to take a look at that, cars, etc.
Wool sweaters.
Thank you so much to Pam and Andrea for coming tonight and giving your time to us. Keep going, keep talking, we're gonna keep listening, so.